Inbox Chapter 1. Hong Kong, 1968. A city caught between two worlds, suspended in a fragile, uneasy limbo. On the surface, the British colonial empire was projecting an image of absolute order, building gleaming modern skyscrapers, expanding the deep-water shipping lanes of Victoria Harbor, and driving millions of dollars into the global banking system. But if you traveled just a few miles inland, away from the luxury tourist hotels, the bright lights, and the neat colonial avenues, the illusion of control completely dissolved. The walled city of Kowloon, a sprawling 7-acre architectural nightmare, an accidental fortress of lawlessness, ungoverned by the British, abandoned by the Chinese, and entirely consumed by darkness. Within its borders, over 30,000 souls lived stacked on top of each other in dripping, windowless concrete high-rises. It was a labyrinth of tangled electrical wires, leaking pipes and narrow, rain-slicked alleys where the sun never reached the ground. It was an enclave ruled entirely by the triad syndicates, a sanctuary for smugglers, gamblers, outlaw, and secrets. It was inside this specific dark maze that the true, raw martial arts of the era found their home. Not in the sterile, commercialized training schools of the West, and certainly not under the watchful eyes of the British police, but here, in the humid, hidden spaces. For generations, the rooftops of Hong Kong had hosted a brutal, unspoken subculture known as Bay Mo. These were illegal, unregulated, no-holds-barred sparring matches. They were the crucible where rival clans settled blood feuds, disputed territories, and tested the absolute limits of their combat styles. There were no padded mats, no protective gloves, no ticking round clocks, and absolutely no referees to stop the damage. A fighter's entire reputation could be built in a 10-second flash of brilliance, or permanently shattered on a concrete roof. By the winter of 1968, the colonial government had launched an aggressive, highly publicized crackdown to eliminate these illegal gatherings, forcing the underground circuit to adapt. The fights couldn't happen under the open sky anymore. They were driven deeper, down into the damp basements of textile warehouses, the abandoned frames of steel foundries, and the hollowed-out hulls of retired cargo ships rotting at the docks. It became a ghost's world, an iron-clad, invitation-only circle where Western faces were strictly forbidden, and a single leaked word meant severe violence. Yet, as the winter damp settled over the colony, a strange whisper began to ripple through the dock worker tea houses. The rumors claimed that the inner circle was fracturing, that an unlisted, highly exclusive gathering was being organized by the elders, and that a rare collection of phantoms, masters who walked completely outside the traditional boundaries of the martial arts world, were quietly stepping off the ships. The stage was being set for a rarely documented collision that the history books would spend the next 50 years trying to pretend never happened.
If you look at the municipal logs from the late 60s, the Royal Hong Kong Police simply stopped entering Kowloon entirely. Basically, whatever happened inside those walls stayed inside those walls.
Inbox, Chapter 2. To truly understand how this unlisted gathering fractured the underground world, one must look away from the docks of Hong Kong and trace a path across the Pacific Ocean, back to a young, quiet American military veteran who had recently stepped back onto Western soil. Years earlier, long before his face would ever grace a Hollywood movie screen or an international magazine cover, this young man was just another conscript in the United States Air Force, stationed at the remote, windswept base of Osan in South Korea. He found himself a stranger in a completely foreign world, It was there, amidst the freezing mud and the rigid military discipline, that he encountered a style of combat that would permanently rewire his mind. Tang Soo Do. It wasn't the flashy, theatrical sport martial arts seen in modern gymnasiums. It was a punishing, linear discipline designed for survival. He immersed himself in the training, enduring hours of brutal conditioning under local masters, hardening his shins against wooden posts, and mastering the explosive, devastating kicks that would later define his legacy. When his tour of duty ended and he finally returned to civilian life in the United States, he brought that raw, unyielding Asian discipline back to a soft Western culture. He opened up small, humble training studios and entered the American karate tournament circuit. The results were instantaneous and terrifying. He completely dominated the competition. He moved through the national circuits like a machine of pure precision, capturing consecutive World Grand Championships, his name becoming a feared headline among the elite fighters of the West. He was a master of full contact power. But as the trophies accumulated and the praise grew louder, a profound sense of dissatisfaction began to rot beneath the surface. The American tournament scene was governed by a strict, bloodless point system. Pull your punches, light contact only. The referees would stop the clock the exact second a strike landed, resetting the fighters to pristine safety. To a man who had trained with raw military intensity in the Korean mud, it felt artificial. It felt like a game, not combat. He began to realize that the Western champions were fighting in a vacuum. He wanted to know if his techniques would actually hold up against the ancient, fluid styles of the East, where fighting wasn't a hobby or a sport, but an absolute philosophy of life and death. In the late winter months of 1968, he quietly packed a single bag, bypassed the commercial tournament boards, and boarded a flight directly to Hong Kong. He didn't check into the luxury tourist hotels on the harbor. He didn't seek out the public, choreographed martial arts demonstrations designed for Western eyes. Instead, he buried himself deep in the damp underbelly of the colony, his large, broad-shouldered frame standing out as a conspicuous anomaly in the crowded, neon-lit alleys of Kowloon. He wore a simple, unbranded canvas jacket, his knuckles heavily calloused and scarred from years of hitting ironwood boards. He was a ghost searching for a gateway, looking for an answer that the modern world was no longer allowed to provide.
When Chuck first arrives at Kowloon, he's got no idea what he's looking for, just that he's gonna find it. Little does he know, his arrival marks another young man's homecoming.
Inbox Chapter 3. Soon, it would be known. The American veteran was not the only ghost drawn to the heavy smoke and lights of the Kowloon underbody that winter. Watching from the darkness was a local icon, a rebel whose very existence was a direct, volatile threat to the traditional martial arts establishment of Hong Kong. Years prior, he had been a top, prized student under the legendary Grand Masters of Wing Chun, learning the tight, rapid-fire trapping hands designed for close-quarters combat. However, along with his unprecedented drive to learn the arts, he also possessed a restless, modern, and aggressive intellect. He flatly refused to accept ancient dogmas blindly. He believed that classical martial arts had become rigid, trapped by flowery, useless movements that would fail in a real street fight. He had recently traveled to America and completely shattered the traditional establishment at the Long Beach International Karate Championships. He had demonstrated a terrifying showcase of human physics, standing a single inch away from a grown man's chest. With no backswing and no visible momentum, He delivered a strike that launched his opponent backward into a chair, the one-inch punch. He was a man obsessed with simplification, with stripping away the non-essential to create a combat system that was fluid, raw, and devastatingly efficient. As his name was quickly becoming synonymous with danger on the U.S. West Coast, his fate was drawing him back to his roots. Soon, he was back in his home city, the city he was forced to leave as a teenager for his participation in Baymo. He slowly made his way through the crowded streets. Back in the U.S., he had learned that the unregulated fight scene that drew him in as a teenager had persisted on in shadows. On this particular night, inside the hazy warehouse, he did not step up to the wooden ring. He stood where he could observe the action while remaining unseen. He wore a dark, high-collar jacket to hide from his infamous status. His eyes locked onto the combatants below, dissecting their hip rotations, tracking their footwork, and calculating their flaws with mechanical precision. He was watching the tournament unfold, under complete cover provided by the tension in the air and the roaring crowd.
Everyone in that building that night could feel it in the air, that something historical, magical, impossible was about to happen, and they would be absolutely correct in thinking that.
Chapter 4. As the night wore on, the smoke inside the concrete fortress grew thicker. The matches shifted from technical exhibitions to raw, unadulterated brutality. Bout after bout, a devastating titan had completely dominated the wooden platform. He moved like a demolition machine, breaking limbs, shattering ribs, winning match after match with terrifying ease. After this latest triumph, the crowd stopped cheering and began glancing around, but not one soul remained with enough courage or stupidity to face this leviathan. The promoter running the operation scanned the smoke-laced venue, frantic, desperate, completely unable to find another challenger, willing to step into the meat grinder. Even waving around a generous cash prize had zero effect. He announced he's closing down the night when a lone, drenched, hooded figure slowly emerged through the main entryway. He bypassed the betting tables, walked directly up onto the platform, and reached up to slide off his hood. It was the American veteran, Chuck Norris. The promoter grinned a crooked grin and jumped down to the betting floor. As the two faced off, the rain outside increased to a steady downpour, accompanied by the distant, deep rumblings of thunder off in the distance, lightly shaking the corrugated steel roof. The battle that followed was jolting. This was not the power level of previous duels that night. The reigning champion threw everything he had at the outsider. But the American was too structurally strong, too impossibly resilient. He absorbed the punishment, countered with bone-crushing linear power, and confidently delivered the final strike, ending the match. The entire arena watched in awe as the broken, once invincible Goliath was physically dragged off the platform by 4 men severely injured. The sole consolation being, he might open his eyes in the morning. Now, seeing the former king of the ring carried away in such a crippled state, landed the arena right back in its original predicament. The crowd was stunned, the ringleader was speechless, and the platform was short a contender once again. That is, until a new shadowy figure moved forward from the darkness. Nearing the edge of the light was the young Hong Kong rebel himself, Bruce Lee. He smoothly removed his dark jacket, stepped onto the platform, and met the American outsider face to face. As he tossed his jacket to the side and it hit the ground, raging thunder outside matched the impact. Bright, blinding flashes of lightning began exploding through the large industrial windows. The storm had officially arrived. The crowd roared with intensity as the ringman dropped his arms, beginning the match. The two fighters fought on and on, a flawless, endless paradox of combat. They could not have been more perfectly, evenly matched, the local natives slicing through the air with blistering, impossible speed, countered by the Americans' unyielding mechanical strength and pinpoint accuracy. As the exchange of power neared its peak, the once rowdy, chaotic warehouse was almost completely still. Every last person sat frozen, paralyzed by what they were witnessing. The only real sounds left echoing inside the solid, concrete walls were the exchange of heavy blows, loud, guttural grunts, and the large wooden support beams bending as they resisted the storm outside. Then, amidst the absolute peak of their prowess, exhibiting immaculate perfection, both legends threw their final, devastating counterstrike simultaneously. Their fists met in the center of the ring. At that exact millisecond, a massive bolt of lightning struck the steel roof panels directly above. A violent sound tore through the warehouse, and to this day, the witnesses who survived that night argue over what they truly heard. No one knew if it was the deafening crack of thunder or the sound of shattering bones. The only certainty was that the main transformer had blown, plunging the entire warehouse into pitch-black darkness. After a brief, stunned moment of silence, the sharp, rhythmic wail of far-off sirens could be heard echoing down the narrow alleyways of Kowloon, closing in fast. Whether those sirens were racing to aggressively shut down an illegal fighting circuit, or evacuate citizens from the path of a tropical storm tearing the city apart, we might never know. When the emergency flashlights finally cut through the lingering haze moments later, the wooden platform stood empty. The two phantoms had vanished back into the shadows from which they came. They left no scorecards, no trophies, no definitive answers, only an arena covered in dried sweat and blood, and a legacy that would alter the course of martial arts history forever. Some might claim their paths only crossed years later in America. But the accounts of the walled city know otherwise. Even more will go on to say, the storm of '68 never truly ended. It just moved further underground. Chuck Norris originally mastered Tang Soo Do. Bruce Lee, originally a student of Wing Chun. Both would forge their own unique styles, combining the best elements from all over the world